Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're going to continue reading the second chapter of this book, The Comet Seekers. Let's begin. Comet West. Razan keeps looking out of the window as they eat their boiled eggs. Liam knows why. Sundown is coming and she wants to be out before dark. Every night this week has been the same. The comet was predicted, but still it hasn't arrived. There's only 2 days and a weekend left of the half-term holidays, and then she'll have to go home. If he knew how, Liam would stop the time from moving forwards, and stay in this week, this exact one, for all his life. He looks at the clock on the kitchen wall, and Razan looks at the dusk beyond the window, out to the red tent that is pitched up in the field. The red tent was a present from his mommy the year before she died. Liam knows it was from her because his dad would never have chosen something red, although it had both of their names on the label. His mom wore red, yellow and gold and red and purple, all the colors of the rainbow. She never seemed quite in the right place on their farm, so far from everywhere. Maybe that's why she left it so early. Inside a tent, the light is different to anywhere else in the world. It is like being inside a balloon that is flying up into the sun. Can I bring Bobby with me tonight? Razan rolls her eyes. Liam's not really this young. He'll be 7 later this year, and most nights he forgets about Bobby altogether. But if he's going to try to stay in this week forever without time moving forwards, he'd quite like to keep Bobby with him. Pandas don't live in tents. Bobby does. He likes the red. Anyway, pandas don't live in Ireland either. Razan made Bobby stay in the house last night because of the risk of rain, although it didn't rain in the end, and there was no comet either, so it was a bit of a waste. Liam thinks that maybe Bobby will be a good omen for them tonight. If you like, you can bring an omen too, he says. I don't need one. Razan zips up his coat by the back door and puts Bobby in his big coat pocket. I've got you. While Liam arranges everything in the tent in the field, Razan starts to work on her maps. She's been drawing them every night. Maps of the nighttime sky so that she can see how each thing moves, how near and far from each other they get. It was one of the first things she learned to draw when she was little, and she still thinks it's the best. Why draw a square house with a triangular roof when you can draw the patterns in the stars? Lime thinks her maps look a bit like join the dots. That if he just knew how to read them properly, something extraordinary would appear. Maybe the comet will help, like the coat key he has in his coloring books. Yesterday he did a tractor. Liam. He puts Bobby in his sleeping bag and unzips the tent. The dark comes quickly. He's noticed that in this past week. I think it's come. The comet? Of course. That's grand. Razan doesn't look at him the whole time. Her eyes are fixed on the sky. The comet is more like a blur, really. Like someone has dropped a silver pen on a page of black paper and then smudged it with their thumb. Is that it? Liam says. Why is it so small? Because it's far away. But what do you mean, why is it so faint? And that's because it's far away too, but it's moving towards us, so it's going to get brighter. When? Maybe later tonight. Are you sure? Maybe tomorrow. So, what are we going to do tonight? It's getting cold already, out here in the dark. What with it not even being spring yet, not for a few weeks anyway. Tonight we're going to watch it move, Razan says, as she pulls her sleeping bag from inside the tent. If we lie here, we'll be able to see the sky all night long. Liam crawls inside the tent. He's cold. He thinks that Razan will follow him in, but he knows that's stupid. That's a stupid thing to think. She's never followed him anywhere. It's always the other way around. He takes Bobby out of the sleeping bag, brushes away the bits of grass on the floor of the tent, and sits him up in the corner instead. But it's not fun being in the tent on his own, even with Bobby, so he forces himself to count to 100, and then he unzips the door again and looks out. Razan is lying on her back in the sleeping bag. He drags his sleeping bag out of the tent, lays it along the grass next to Razan, and wriggles inside. I'm back, he says, although she doesn't reply, and even if she did, all she'd say is that he's stating the obvious. He always seems to be doing that. Hold your breath and count, she says. If you count long enough and hold your breath long enough, you'll be able to see it move, because it's flying. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's flying so fast and so far away, it can change the whole sky in the time you can hold your breath for. It's the fastest thing in the solar system. You just have to hold on, and then you'll see. Liam lies as still as he's ever been, and watches and waits and holds on. The grass bristles against his skin, the night breeze blows his hair into his eyes, but he doesn't move to brush it away. His face gets hotter the longer he goes without breathing. His lips purse into a tight wiggly line, eyes wide and gleaming, his hand grasping onto his cousin's. Can you see it? She asks. You breathe it. Liam lets out his breath, gasps in more nighttime air. It's the kind of air that smells of ice and fresh grass and pajamas. Razan's hand is clutching his, and they look at each other and breathe in unison, a big open-mouthed breath to sustain them for another 30 seconds or 60 as they turn their eyes back to the sky. Nothing moves. They both know what they want to see when they grow up. Liam is going to be a farmer like his dad, and Razan is going to move far away and become an astrophysicist. She knows the names of all the constellations and the different shapes of the moon and the order of the planets, and she knows when the comets are going to be in the sky. That's why she persuaded Liam to camp out in the field with her tonight, the night when it will be at its brightest. She stares up at the sky and then, still lying on the grass, holds the notebook high over her face and starts drawing. What are you doing? He wants to understand. Astronomy, she says. I'm mapping the sky. I have to mark where the comet is now in relation to the stars, so that we can see how far it moves. Otherwise, we might forget. It's not moving, but it will. Have patience. Liam rolls his eyes. This astronomy takes too long. Look, she shows him her map. See those stars? I've marked them here. And the comet is in between those two right now. See? He nods, reluctantly. You can go inside if you really want. I don't want. She tears off a black sheet of paper and gives it to him, along with one of the spare pencils from her pencil case. She takes it with her everywhere, so she can always map the sky. What should I draw? Whatever you want to draw. She always talks to him like this, as if she's the grown-up, even though she's only 2 years older than he is. He frowns in concentration. He's not going to ask her more questions tonight. His pencil hovers over the page. Liam falls asleep while the comet is still between the two stars overhead. Buried deep into his sleeping bag with the zip done up to way over his head. On the dew-damp grass in the early hours of the morning, his drawing blends into indecipherable marks. The farm, the field, his house, the cows and sheep, his dad, the lack of his mom, and Razan staring up at the sky. Dots and lines that have been smudged out of context by a careless thumb until they're their meaning is lost. Yes, of course I went to the priest. You're a nosy old man, you know that? I went on account of the dirty books I've been reading. Severine's granny has walked into the room, mid-sentence, uninvited. She has started talking to her ghosts again. I said to him in the confession, now, Father, there's no point in you telling me to stop reading them, because I'm not going to stop reading them, and that's that. People say that Severine's granny is mad in the head. Severine can see they're thinking it now, in the way they look at her mother, as if she could do something about it this time. They're my books now, I told him. They were given to me by my dead husband, God rest his soul, and I like reading them. The ladies from the village sip silently, had their tea, and let the china cups rattle in their saucers. Severine's granny has finished saying what she wanted to say, and is now turning her back, but before she leaves the room she looks at Severine with a wink and a nod of her head. Severine understands. She waits 5 minutes and then follows her granny upstairs so she can talk to the ghosts as well, and maybe get a read over Granny's books. She's not sure why her mother seemed so embarrassed, but she's fairly sure that means the books would be worth a look. Who's here today, Granny? Announce yourselves. Granny is not theatrical. Her delivery is dry. A quick swipe of her hand in the air shows her impatience with the ghosts. Come on then, who's here? She stops still for a moment, listening, then begins to register in a voice not entirely unlike Severine's schoolteacher. Severine is in Quartième, but already the middle school feels too small. She can wait to start at the lycée. We've got your Uncle Antoine. Hello, Bet. Henry from the 1750s, and the sisters in lace dresses. Then there's Efiku, I'm not sure you read that right, her soldier boy, and your great-grandpa Paul Francois, of course, and Brigitte, over in the corner. I love goats, Severine says and curtsies to the room. She's 14 now and wants to make a good impression, behave like a grown-up, not like the last time they were here, when she was a child, and run around the room trying to catch them like moths in her palm. Tell me about Mama, from before I was born. Severine talks to Antoine, and her granny tells her his reply. Your mother used to lead him into trouble, so he says. She says. Severine can't imagine her mother leading anyone into trouble. Not ever. Her mama's not fun like that. Was Mama clever? She was the cleverest, he says. But he thinks you knew that already. Oh, do be quiet, you daft old man. What? Granny, tell me what he said. He says they were best friends, that they used to camp out in the field past the stream, stay awake all night and watch the stars. But what did great-grandpa Paul Francois say when you told him to be quiet? He'll tell you himself when he's good and ready. It's not fair. Her granny knows that Severine can hear the ghosts, and Severine doesn't really believe she'll ever be able to. Maybe in the next visit, her granny softens, speaking kindly. But that could be years from now. Severine purses her lips, listens as hard as she can, tries to believe. What Antoine can't believe is how old she's got. The last time he saw her, she was skipping between the grown-ups' outstretched arms, but now almost a woman, and so like her mother, who still refuses to see him. What would he say to her if she could hear? He doesn't know the answer, but he wishes the comet would stay for longer. He can feel himself being pulled away already, feel the earth slipping beneath his feet. Severine! Her mother is calling her from downstairs. Maybe she wants her to go and play the piano for the ladies. Severine! I'd better go, Severine says to the room. Please excuse me for a moment. She quietly shuts the door behind her and heads back down the stairs. Her mama wants to know if she's done her piano practice yet. Tells her she should be doing that instead of encouraging her granny's nonsense. 10 minutes later, Mozart morphs into Mr. Moonlight, and her mother doesn't even notice. She finishes with a flourish and leaves the piano. There are more important things to do today. Severin passes the bookcases and looks out of the window, steps closer to peer up at the sky, and measures the length of the comet's tail between a thumb and forefinger, held up close to her eyes. Her granny says the ghosts will only stay for as long as she can see it in the sky. The brighter it is, the more they have to say. It's already bright this evening, and it's not even completely dark yet, so she still has time. She has to learn to hear them. If they do exist, she wants to know the truth. And her granny says they don't come often, the ghosts and their comets. What would ghosts really talk about, she wonders. But when Severine gets back upstairs, her granny's having her afternoon nap, and the ghosts, so far as she can tell, are resting in the corners of the upstairs study. Great-grandpa Paul Francois' ghost is probably curled up under the desk like a tabby cat. Severine thinks about waking them, but her granny is always talking about her aching bones, and she thinks maybe she should let her sleep for a while at least. For a little while at least. At school, the needlework they are making a tapestry. Well, really, it's more of a quilt. Everyone in her year has to embroider a square, stitching in colors and people, sewing on sequins and beads and small patches of fabric. The theme is Bayeux. It is their home. Some of her classmates have stitched outlines of their houses, family members looking out from the window or standing in front gardens. Wool and thread dyed especially for their hair. Others are making the countryside with blue chiffon for a river, red beads hanging from cherry trees. Severine's full of faces, her granny in the middle, sitting on a chair that looks more like a throne. The room around her hidden behind all the faces of all the ghosts, at least the ones she knows about. There is great-grandpa Paul Francois with cotton wool for his beard. Uncle Antoine, who died when he was only a boy. Henry from the 1750s, standing in between the sisters with lace dresses. Great-great-grandma Belanger, she thinks that's her granny's granny. And behind them are others whose names she can't remember, but whose stories she has heard. There is the woman who originally built their house in Bayeux, Brigitte, she remembers, and looks out some orange fabric for flames. Ça alors, you must have a big family, the teacher says, looking over her shoulder. How many of you are there in your house? It's me, my mama, and my granny, Severine replies. Needle in hand, lips pursed again in concentration as soon as she has spoken. There is a scattering of laughter from along the row, but Severine ignores that. Behind her, the teacher frowns to herself, but says nothing. Moves on to the next girl, embroidering the next version of a family. Now, the teacher claps her hands to get their attention. How many of you have visited the real Bayeux tapestry? Granny, why do the ghosts come to visit? Severine asks, as she watches her granny beat the soft dough for the brioche. Because they like to be seen. Pass me the butter. How am I supposed to see them if you won't tell me how? Her granny smiles, scrapes the dough from the sides of the bowl. Not everything is about you, sweetheart. Severine goes quiet, but her granny doesn't. Now tell me, what are you learning about the school? The Bayeux tapestry. The granny's eyebrows rise and fall. She looks to the corner of the room and smiles. That's good. Severine runs to the corner of the kitchen and smacks her hands into the wall, leaving palm prints of flour. Are they here? she asks, spinning around. She's getting impatient. Who cares about school when there are ghosts to talk to? They're misbehaving today. No place for young ladies. Granny, the doll has to rise now. You know for how long? 90 minutes, says Severin. Maybe 2 hours. Good, says her mother from the door. That means you can do your homework while you wait. Severin looks up at her granny, who winks and nods. We'll try getting some sense out of these crazy ghosts later. Her mother beckons her from the door, and reluctantly she leaves the kitchen and the ghosts and her granny. But why doesn't one come to visit? Severin asks later, as they spread the warm brioche with butter and red currant jam. Her granny smiles. I think my son is here for me. Or perhaps your mother. Mama? Severin asks, surprised, but her granny doesn't respond. And why does Brigitte always stand on her own? Later. Stirred, but softening again. I'll tell you later, Severin. Have patience. If you want to see the ghost, you have to be able to wait. Severin does not finish her assignment about the Bayeux tapestry. She spends the evening going through the old photo albums she's found in a bookcase in the piano room. There are only a few of her mama from when she was really young, when she was a baby and her granny had curly dark hair and a knowing smile. Then a family holiday, with the only photo she knows of great-grandpa Paul Francois. They're on the beach with bucket and spade. Granny, great-grandpa Paul Francois and her mama and Antoine in swimming costumes that go down almost to their knees. There is the one with her mother and father together, smiling at the 50s as they slipped into the 60s and everything was soon to change. And then the final page. On top is a wedding photo. Her mama in a white lacy dress that her granny had made by hand, and her dad in a suit with the best man beside him. Below that, the last in the album, the hospital photo, her mama smiling at newborn Severin, and her father beside the bed. He was smiling too, maybe, but he is blurred out and out of focus, and her mother's eyes are looking up, out of the room, straight out of the photo, as if searching for something hidden behind a camera's lens. Wake up! Lime's on a dark beach, full of crashing waves and salt that stings his eyes. He's trying to shout, but he can't. Trying to run, but he falls and the rocks scrape away at his skin. He scrambles up from his knees. There is only fear and panic, and the ground dissolving beneath his feet, and he has to find his mother. Come on. Razan pulls the sleeping bag down despite his aunts clutching it up above his head. You have to see this. Is it daytime? It's morning, but it's amazing now. It's so bright. What? Wake up. I don't know how much time we have. 2 countries, 2 channels away, Severin stands in front of a tapestry. The laughter of the others from her school all around her. The tapestry is behind glass. If it wasn't, she might have reached out to touch it. Instead, she just stares and stares. In the corner of the panel, embroidered in shining thread, is what looks like a shooting star, all yellow and gold, like a child's drawing of a comet chariot, powered by the sun and the wind. And there's something she's trying to remember. One of her granny's stories from years ago. There was a girl who was in love with a soldier, a boy who died on the battlefield. And their names. She was told their names once. Strange sounding names, not French, nor English, something else. And there's something pulling at her mind, at her heart, that dissolves when a boy from school pulls on her ponytail. Hurry up, he says. The teacher told me to get you. Everyone's leaving. You're out of time. As it turns out, there's all the time in the world for Liam and Wazan that morning. The sky is orange peel and baled hay. Clouds are gathering over towards the hills, but the air is fresh as lemon juice. They are lying side by side on opened sleeping bags on the damp grass and staring at the comet that can be seen in the daytime sky. It's so rare, Russell says, but she doesn't need to explain. Not really. Lion might not know much about the stars, but he knows that there is something special in what they are seeing. A comet so bright it can be seen in the daytime sky. That has to mean something. That has to be something worth watching. How are you going to mark it on your maps? I don't know. She sounds despairing. You could draw it next to the farm, between Dad's shed there and the fence around the cow's field. Lime can see how that would work. When he imagines the world, it is always somehow relative to the farm. It's not about the farm, says Wazan, a little stroppily. He can't answer that. But it was a nice idea, she says, softening. He looks from the comet to his cousin and back again. The comet gets dimmer as the morning passes. Lime's dad trudges around the farm, feeding, checking, clearing, talking to himself, or sometimes to the memory of his wife beside him. Don't you want to leave here? Razan whispers. No. How could Liam leave his dad when it's just the two of them? Not now, obviously, I get that. You're still a kid, but when you're a grown-up, you're still a kid too. But there's nothing left to explore on the farm. I don't want to go away. But you can come on an adventure with me. Maybe one day. Liam doesn't like lying to Wazan, but he doesn't know how to make her understand. Well, I'm going to explore the universe, she says. Liam knows that they should go in soon for breakfast. His dad will be waiting for them. It seems like his dad spends all the time waiting for people to come home, though most of them have gone for good. That's what astronomers do, says Razan. They go and explore the universe. Liam looks up at his cousin. She's spinning round and round now with her arms spread wide, and he forgets about his dad. I know, he says with a cheeky smile. He doesn't usually talk back to her. You've already told me about the universe. She stops spinning and looks surprised for a second, then pulls his bobbled head down over his eyes. Glad you were paying attention, she says, before grabbing the sleeping bag from the ground and running inside. That afternoon, Liam's dad drives them to the village vet. Wazan stares out of the truck window and at the sheep watching them pass, then into the woods where the trees hide weasels and badgers. As they wind through the outskirts of the village, she waves at her house even though she knows her mom is still away. You okay, Bet? Asks her uncle. Did you know that there are 100 billion stars in our galaxy? Look, he smiles. We've arrived. Razan is up and out of the car, waiting impatiently for Liam to undo his seatbelt. There are stalls lined up along the high street, sweets and candy floss, wooden figurines painted in bright colors, soft rugs of sheepskin that Razan can help but touch, knitted dolls, and on the green, an assortment of engines and tractor parts that have arrived on a huge truck. Razan grabs Lime's hand. Come on, and leads her cousin running up to the toffee apple stall. Can we have one? She asks, fishing in her bag for this week's pocket money. The coins spread out on her palm when she shakes her hand, a jangle of silver and copper, pennies and 10-pence pieces. We'll share. She passes it to Liam and smiles at Mr. Toffee Apple. Actually, it's Mr. Morris that runs the toffee apple stall, and they go to the green and sit on one of the benches by the trees. He's my Latin teacher, Razan says, nodding at Mr. Morris. Razan is in a different school to Liam. Then when they're older, they'll go to the same school in the town, because that's where everyone goes. Do you want to know Latin? She asks. He doesn't answer. He's preoccupied with the toffee apple. So Razan starts reciting for him anyway, or maybe for herself. Amo, amas, amat, she says. Amamus, amatis, amant. Lego, legas, legat. Legamus, legatis, legant. The textbook they use in her Latin class tells stories, and actually Razan likes the stories more than she likes amos, amo, amas, amat. There is a Roman man called Cecilius who lives in Pompeii, and he has a wife called Metella, a son Quintus, and a dog Cerberus. She knows that Vesuvius will erupt by the end of the year, but the whole family will refuse to leave their home. She flicked forward in the book and read the final chapters. She likes to know how things will turn out, but she doesn't like the fact that they stayed in Pompeii. They should have run away when the ash started to fall. For now, Cecilius is going to do business in the Agora, and his son is playing with a dog in the garden. They are quite rich Romans. They used to have a slave, but soon Cecilius is going to make him a freedman. It's a very moral textbook. We could run away, she says. We'll go on an adventure. Liam takes a bite of the toffee apple, smudges caramel on his chin. Down to the river. How about that? We can make a secret hut where no one will find us, and we can explore all the country, and you can bring Bobby. I don't need to bring Bobby, he says, momentarily sounding older than he is. He can't always be the baby. But he can build a secret hut. But we can build a secret hut. She takes a bite of the toffee apple, still clutched in his hand. Liam's dad is looking at the tractor pieces on the green, but every now and then he turns round to check on the kids. They're like brother and sister, those two, he thinks. It is good for Liam not to be on his own all the time. The last year has been hard on them both. The toffee apple sticks is thrown in the bin, and Razan on her feet again. The toffee apple stick is thrown in a bin, and Razan's on her feet again. Right, let's go. It's starting to get dark, but she's pulling him along beside the green and heading for the river that runs by the village through the woods. The Lime's dad is beside them, and he's saying, "Where are you two off to?" "Just playing, Uncle Edan." "Time to go home," he says, taking Razan's hand and trusting Lime to follow along. "Your mom asked me to look after you while she's away," he says to her, "and that's what I'm doing." He's not normally strict, Lime's dad, but he's too preoccupied, and Razan is surprised that he even noticed that they were running away. So he says, "Fish fingers for tea?" "Can we watch the comet again later?" Lime's dad looks up. He can't see anything so unusual about the sky. "She's a funny girl, Razan, and in the clouds, and always staring at the stars, just like his brother, searching for something. Not that that's an excuse for running off the way he did. Taking Razan for the week was the least he could do." "Of course you can, Pet," he says kindly, wondering how a father could ever leave his child. At dusk, the stars begin to appear around the corner, one by one. "Tonight's the night," Razan says. She seems more excited than ever. They're back out by the tent, and she's arranging the sleeping bag for them to sit on. "But I've already seen it." "That's not the point. It's not enough to just see it. You have to see it fly. You have to see it change." "All right then." Lion looks up, but her hands are suddenly clasped over his eyes. "Not now, not like this. Wait." She starts digging around for her maps, and a sigh escapes his lips. She's insisting he pays attention to the dots and lines on her sketchpad. Some constellations are named, and they are the ones she points out to him. See this shape? Yes. Okay, good. Now remember that. And see it here? That's where the comet was last night, okay? Yes, yes, yes. Grand, I think you're ready, and it's nearly time. Her ponytail has come loose in the breeze, and a strip of hair is caught in her mouth. He reaches to her face and brushes it away. Of course I'm ready, he says, and she looks at him as if she's pleased. Liam wonders how his cousin got to be so bossy. He likes it though, it's secret. It's not often that someone tells him what to do. It's not often that someone even notices him. He once heard his dad talking about the farm to one of his great aunts that came to visit from Dublin. It was just after the funeral, on the day everyone came for cake. He said that the world didn't need the farm, but that his heart wouldn't let him leave. When Liam remembers that, he wonders if it really was the farm his dad was talking about. Now, I'm going to prove to you that the comet is flying faster than anything else in the sky. But it's still not moving. She puts her notebook down on the grass and squeezes his hand tight. I'll help you. How are you going to help? Don't look up. Look here. Remember? She puts her map on his lap and he stares at it, trying to memorize the shapes, biting out his bottom lip in the expression that he's had when concentrating since he was learning to read and write, learning to build a farm with wooden blocks. This is exactly what the sky looked like last night, at exactly this time. Now, close your eyes. But I'll miss it moving if I do that. You won't miss it moving, you'll notice that it has moved, and that's different. Okay, Lion says with a bit of trust and a bit of uncertainty, and a bit of something else that he's not able to describe. Go on, she insists. Close your eyes. For me, please. This time, Lyman closes his eyes. He feels Razan moving, but keeping hold of his hand. He can tell she's sitting up. Next, he feels the air get warmer. His shivers stop, the breeze dies down, and then she plants a kiss on his lips. It is the swift, soft kiss of children, of cousins and best friends, of someone who has known you since the day you were born. She lies back down and the breeze picks up. The smells of the farm brush over his skin. His lips feel tingly. He keeps his eye closed and he listens to the sound of her lying back down on the grass, and listens for the sound of the comet flying overhead. What kind of sound would that make? The sound of running out past the horses' shelter, past the stream that winds along the bottom of the field and up the hill, up to the highest point of the village. To look back at things that are small and big, and that make up everything he has known in his life. Okay, you can open your eyes now. Liam opens his eyes. At first, he can't find it. He looks back to the bright star it had been next to, then sideways to Razan. He looks for the constellations, but the comet's not where it should be. Razan has her hair in a sideways ponytail so she can lay her head flat on the ground, and she's grinning at him like she knows a secret she's not quite decided to share. It's there now, she points, and it's true. The comet has moved on. It really must be the fastest thing in the whole of the sky. It has passed by stars and through the transparent scattering of clouds, and even though it looks like everything is completely still overhead now, even though he hasn't actually seen the comet moving, he knows that it has moved. Razan's hand is still holding his. He doesn't want to take his eyes off the sky. He doesn't want to move. He watches the comet for a long time, longer than ever before. They lie side by side and stare at the sky, and Liam wonders if staying perfectly still is the way to live in 1 week, in one moment, for the rest of his life. But when he looks back down to the farm, everything has moved. He can feel the rush of the wind as the earth races around the sun. He feels like he needs to cling on, or he will go flying off into space. Things shifted while he wasn't looking at the ground, and now the world is different. Everything is beautiful and wild and precarious, because now he knows how the sky can change. Okay, that was the second chapter. The next time we're going to be reading Halley's Comet. Thank you for being here once again, and I hope you will have a wonderful day.